Well, that is as good as a morning session as England could have possibly hoped for. Not only have they managed to go through that session unscathed, both overnight batters still not out, Joe Root and Johnny Bairstow. They've also added 97 in that session to reduce their deficit to just 148. This is ESPN Cricket for Matchday. It's lunch on day 3 at Lords. We look back at that session with VVS Laxman and I'm sure a very happy Steve Harmison. I think it's a coincidence now that we're twinning or tripling. I don't know what the term is. Again, that we've got the attire in black today. That's just a total coincidence. But Steve, that's a very good morning for England.
Great morning for England. It was. Don't think it could have got any better for Joe Root going out this morning. I did say yesterday he was key for England to get anywhere near India or go past India in this first innings and stand any chance of winning the Test match or making a move in the Test match on moving day 3. Then Joe Root would have to get a 3-figure score and everybody bat around him. And so far, so good for the England captain. I thought he was magnificent. I thought Bairstow was good as well. I thought they were very difficult to bowl to. Two contrasting techniques where
Yeah.
Joe Root was in more leg side, looking to open up looking up to the offside, and it was harder for the Indians to bowl at Joe because he was running the ball down to third man. They couldn't build pressure. Where Johnny was batting an off stump, looking at it on the leg side, so they were sort of playing tricks with the bowlers. The one thing I was surprised though, I don't know if VVS would agree with me, but I couldn't believe Jasprit Bumrah didn't take the first over this morning. If India had any chance of looking over Joe Root or Johnny Bairstow when the footwork was a bit cold, I thought it was Bumrah was going to be the man, and it was. I think Joe and Johnny would have been looking and thinking, you know what? Yeah, I think they're missing a trick here.
Lakshman?
Yeah, I agree with Steve. Because at the start of the day, you always go with your best bowlers, and there's no doubt that Shami and Jasprit Bumrah are your 1 and 2 bowlers. Yes, I understand Siraj bowled well yesterday. There's the temptation of giving that end to Shami and probably use Siraj from the other end and come back with Jasprit Bumrah. But start of the innings, you saw even yesterday, it was Robinson and Jimmy Anderson who opened the session for England. So I just feel that India should have gone with 2 experienced bowlers and 2 best bowlers in their squad. Having said that, I was a little surprised with the game plan, because someone like Joe Root, you don't allow him to score on both sides of the wicket. Yes, I understand that the game plan is to bowl into the wicket of Joe Root, trying to hit his pads. But then you can't ask your bowlers to consistently bowl and execute that game plan. Who was the best bowler? Who was the standout bowler in this Test match so far? It was Jimmy Anderson. And if you see the line and length of Jimmy Anderson, it was the length which was hitting the top of off stump and the line which was hitting the top of off stump. And that is the ideal line on this surface, especially a surface where there is not much of lateral movement, there's not much of swing on offer. That is where you have to suffocate the batsman and force him to do something different. Whereas if the batsman is getting an opportunity to score on both sides of the wicket, there's nothing which the batsman requires to do or play outside his game plan.
Okay, so you go with that, Steve? Did it look like, India's game plan was off, or was there a lack of a bit of a plan this morning?
Yeah, I think in the last 45 minutes, India were hoping England would make a mistake, and I think when you get to that point, you look at the fielding side and you think, well, they're hoping rather than they think that something's going to happen. What I will say about bowling at Lords, the guy who's bowled the best on this surface is the guy that's played on this surface the most. I'm going to say that because he's played 164 Test matches. He's played on most grounds, but he's got the experience of bowling and he knows how to hit off stump, what angles to hit off stump from. I think the India bowlers are getting beat by the slope more than anything else, and that battle in the slope. Jadeja was the same. I'm surprised Jadeja bowled from a nursery end, turning the ball up the slope, so there wasn't going to be as much turn. So if he got turn, it was sort of neglected by the slope, and England could play him very, very comfortably, even though I think he was quite dangerous. But I think the slope is not helping the Indian bowlers, and their lines and the lengths are off because they can't come to terms with that. And like VVS said, it's too easy for England just to release pressure when there's not a lot happening, clip the ball into the leg side or run it down to third man, off down the other end. I thought both England batsmen rotated the strike very, very well. And there was no way that India could build any sort of pressure for England to make that mistake. They were hoping rather than create the pressure that they needed to do so to get the England batsmen in trouble.
Okay, that's interesting that Steve says that, Lakshman. Now, how much of this do you attribute to what Steve just said? The fact that India's bowlers aren't quite getting this right with the slope at Lords. And we're going to actually have a discussion on the slope at Lords in detail in a few minutes on our match day spotlight. And how much is down to perhaps things looking a lot, less conducive for the fast bowlers than it was, say, yesterday morning? Have things gotten significantly easier to bat? And how much of it is down to the bowlers not quite enjoying themselves given the slope at Lords?
Oh well, see, I can't speak for the bowlers. I mean, Steve is
Right.
probably has got an authority to talk about how tough it is for the bowlers to bowl and get used to the slope. But I think this plan was also tried at Nottingham. If you see, even in Nottingham, and we discussed this, that Shami, Jasprit Bumrah, and Siraj were trying to hit the pads of the batsmen, and that's where I thought Shami was the pick of the bowlers because he was trying to hit the top of off stump and middle stump, whereas Siraj was drifting the ball outside the leg stump, which was free pickings for the batsmen. So I think it's more about the game plan. I think they're trying to get the batsmen out either LBW or caught at mid wicket because they know there's not much of seam movement which you expect in English conditions. But right from the first day, I maintained that this is a very, very classic batting surface. There's
Yeah.
no fresh grass on the wicket. There's not much of pace on the wicket. Even in the first session of the first day, you saw that the ball was not carrying to Joss Butler, the wicketkeeper. So I think that is where, as a batsman, if you're given the opportunity to bat on score on both sides of the wicket, then I'm not under pressure at all. And I'll just wait for the loose deliveries or just look for taking those singles. Because for a batsman, more than boundaries in a test match, I'm always comfortable when I'm able to rotate the strike because no batsman would like to face a bowler for a continuous spell, or probably 6 or 7 deliveries on a trot. If I'm rotating the strike, then it's becoming difficult for the bowler to bowl to batsmen with two different unique styles. So that is why I feel more than the slope, I think it's the mindset of the bowlers where they're trying to get the batsmen either LBW or bowl, and that is where I just feel if they can shift the line where they're trying to hit the top of off stump or just outside the off stump, and then from that angle, the way Jimmy Anderson bowled Rohit Sharma, you get the ball into the right-hander, then you're creating more wicket-taking opportunities.
Okay, interesting. So they're trying the Trent Bridge plan, and we did a detailed discussion on attacking the stumps and how it's been successful for India, in recent times. Steve, what's the difference? Why did it work at Nottingham and not at Lords?
Well, I think the batsmen that are on show in this session for a straight ball are playing it two different ways. You've got a straight ball to Johnny Bairstow, who's batting on off stump and going across, and quite happily given a chance for the bowler to hit him on the pad and LBW, which then these sort of bat is coming, more from sort of second slip, bringing it down towards sort of mid wicket, which are getting the ball to go on the thick inside edge, or it's going onto the leg side, which is only three fielders on, and then you've got Joe Root, who's staying more leg side, who's giving the bowler off stump to hit, but he's also playing it so late that he's letting the ball come right to him, hitting it behind his pad, and he's releasing it down to third man because he knows and he understands that even going hard at it, it's still not quite carrying to slip. And there's an argument I really struggled with the way Virat Kohli had his slip coordination because he had a second slip and a fourth slip. Well, it wasn't really carrying to sort of first and second slip. So he was just trying to cover all bases, I think, and trying not to let Joe Root score down to third man and try and create pressure that way. And then when it really was overpitched, Joe just banged it for four straight through extra cover. So it was very, very difficult to bowl straight at both batsmen for a prolonged period because if they rotated a strike, the same ball was going on the leg side to one batsman, and to the other batsman, it was going through extra cover for four on the other side. So the way the batsmen played, I think that didn't help the Indian bowlers with their consistency and their discipline. And I think that is the two things that I would be saying in the Indian dressing room now. We've got to get our consistency better at whether it's to Joe Root or to Johnny Bairstow. So have a clear plan at one of them. A clear plan at each of them, and then the disciplines has got to be spot on because if not, we're just going to leak runs like you'd not believe in the middle session, and this game could get away from us.
Yeah, I mean, this seems all too easy almost for England. Now, we've gone in detail on India's plan of attack with the seamers. But Lakshman, just a quick word on the spinner. Could you have expected more from Ravindra Jadeja? Doesn't look like he's getting much help out of this either.
Yeah, I think definitely I expect a lot from Ravindra Jadeja. I feel that the 2016 series against England was a breakthrough series for spinner Ravindra Jadeja, because before that, even if India was playing the test matches in India, you always saw Ravindra Jadeja hit the ball hard into the wicket, and because there was so much of help and purchase from the wicket for the spinners, where the ball used to grip and turn, or the ball used to grip and go straight, he was exposing both the edges and also getting the batsman out. But in that series against England, I remember him tossing the ball up, above the eye line of the batsman, and he got a couple of batsmen, including someone like Joss Butler, caught at short cover. He's again gone back to that style of bowling, keeping in mind that probably there's no purchase from the wicket. So my role here is to restrict the flow of runs. In the bargain, he's not able to get the wrist position, which is so important to deceive the batsman in flight. He's only trying to get the batsman out in one fashion, which is probably forcing them to play on the back foot and hurrying them where they can probably get clean bowl or LBW. I just feel that even on this surface, Ravindra Jadeja should try to deceive the batsman in flight. Yes, the hot boundary can be scored through the offside, but you want him to show that intent that is there not only to restrict the flow of runs, but also to take the wicket of the batsman. I think that is a small mindset shift, which I think I would probably love to see from Ravindra Jadeja, because he's more than capable bowler who can deceive the batsman in flight. Only then will the batsman feel the pressure. At the moment, they know that this is the line of attack from Ravindra Jadeja. All they're trying to do is play with the full face of the bat back to the bowler or play in the V.
Yeah, so it's important that you make that towards the end. You believe he's got the ability to actually deceive the batter with flight. A lot of people tend to have the impression that Jadeja needs the surface to help him, but you believe he's a better bowler than that, Lakshman.
Yeah, and he has done that in the past. He has done that in the past, but it doesn't come naturally to him. And the reason it doesn't come naturally to him is, if you see in all the overseas matches, right from the time when MS Dhoni was the captain, Ravindra Jadeja was taken into the playing 11 instead of Ravichandran Ashwin, because the captain wants to attack with the fast bowler and he wants Ravindra Jadeja to do the holding job. Now, that is the kind of communication the captain should have with the bowler. What is his expectations from the spinner? And I believe that only when the captain gives him the free hand and the liberty and communicates saying that I want you to take the wicket of the batsman, suddenly there will be a shift in the mindset. And the bowler will try also, without leaking runs, to pick the wicket of the batsman. At the moment, he's trying to restrict the flow of runs, and automatically, once that is the game plan, his trajectory will be flat. He's looking to bowl stump to stump, not giving anything easy for the batsman to score off. And he's doing a fantastic job as far as that is concerned, because he's bowled 10 overs for, I think, 20 runs. But you would want to take wickets, and that's where Ravindra Jadeja will become probably more potent than at the moment he's showing.
It's a nice point to take us into our match day spotlight discussion. We wanted to spend some time today with VVS Lakshman and Steve Harmison, who know a lot about playing at Lords, and discuss, for a lot of us who may be novices still or may have heard it often, but perhaps not from scratch, and break down what's the big deal about the slope at Lords? Why has it changed the dynamic when it comes to bowling and batting and in bowling as well, spin bowling and fast bowling? You heard Steve a little while back say that he's surprised at the choice of end that Ravindra Jadeja picked. So what's the difference between bowling from the pavilion end and bowling from the nursery end? So we're going to try and break this discussion down with Steve and Lakshman. So let's come to you, Steve Harmison, first up. For a novice, let's say, what's the big deal about the slope at Lords? What are the first things you need to keep in mind? Let's start from a bowler's point of view that change when you suddenly play at Lords.
Well, the change for me when you play at Lords is, especially from the pavilion end, and the best way I can describe it is if you have a look at the pavilion end, the great building at the pavilion end, and you look at the picket fence either side of it, and the course of bricks that are on the, which are next to the grass, you can see the difference between, if you go straight across, the grass goes down with it. So there is, I think from corner to corner, I think it's 1.9 meters. It is nearly 2 meters difference from corner to corner, and you can see when you're at fine leg at the nursery end, you can see you're looking right uphill, and it is very, very difficult. So that's what the slope looks like. So what you have as a bowler, if you're running in from the pavilion end, someone like Glenn McGrath, who just picked up wickets for fun from the pavilion end, your lengths, the minute you go that little bit fuller, on a normal flat surface or on a flat ground, you'd have to go that, think that it's got to be a bit wider. So you feel as though you're battling yourself to chuck it out a bit wider if you're going to go fuller. I always felt bowling from the pavilion end, I had to bowl that little bit shorter to get the ball to go onto off stump because that was my natural length. If I went fuller on that length, it became a very easy, comfortable middling leg clip ball, and I released a load of pressure because the ball just runs down the hill. So for me, I used to love bowling at the pavilion end, and I used to bowl that little bit shorter in length, which got the ball to go over the course of off stump. Because of my action, and Glenn McGrath was a bit similar in the wrist. If you just got one to hold up to go up the hill, batsman's nightmare. Batsmen are thinking, right, I can get across, I can smother the bounce, I can play through the sort of leg side, I can play it straight. But if he gets one to go up the hill, then all of a sudden I'm in a world of pain because I don't really want to be out there, but I have to cover everything because of the tall, the nature, and the bounce. So that's why a lot of good tall bowlers get purchased from the pavilion end. Swing bowlers try to bowl from the nursery end because obviously the same way they throw it up towards leg stump and then swing the ball away. And as you swing the ball away, Matthew Hoggard used to love bowling there. He'd set the ball off on around about middling leg. And as a batsman, you feel as though you've got to play it. And then all of a sudden you're playing way outside because the slope's going, your balance is going, and it brings the outside edge into play. And that's the two contrasting ends. So your line bowlers, your bowlers that use the seam more than swing. So Stuart Broad would bowl from the pavilion end, and your swing bowlers would predominantly bowl from the nursery end, which would big juicy half volleys for the batsman to go out and have a big booming driver. But because by the time the ball gets to the batsman and the slope goes with it, they tend to play a long way outside off stump. And when they see it again, they go, why on earth am I playing out there? And it's just the optical illusion of the slope at Lords. It's a weird and wonderful thing. And as an Englishman, because you play there all the time, you use it in your favour. But as an overseas bowler, you can get drawn into being too straight from the pavilion end and get clipped down the hill, and too wide from the nursery end as a swing bowler and not be effective, or be getting too wide and get driven. So that for me is, from a bowling point of view, is the contrast. And just to go on Jadeja, the reason why I think he's at the wrong end, because if he just bowls from the pavilion end and just the way he bowls, flat trajectory, goes down the hill, especially where he sort of gets people caught on the crease. He just gets one to go up the hill and turns. All of a sudden, with a modern game DRS, he is massively in the game.
Okay, that's brilliant. That's as good as an exhaustive analysis of both ends from a bowler. And to just give you some perspective, I'm just going to read out the most successful bowlers at Lords. We'll look at the overseas bowlers first, because there are plenty of English bowlers. Anderson's right up that list, no surprise. But I just look at the overseas bowlers that have been successful. You could see it's not, you won't be surprised. You've got 5 all-time greats in the top 5. You've got Richard Hadley at the top with 26 wickets in 4 games. Glenn McGrath just played 3 tests at Lords. Looked like he kept bowling at Lords, but perhaps we confuse it across the one-day game as well. But 26 wickets for McGrath, an average of 11.5 at Lords in 3 tests. Number 3 is Malcolm Marshall. Number 4 is Tim Southey. So you see a swing bowler there too, and you've got Courtney Walsh at 5. So you've got some really, top quality test bowlers. When you look at the overseas bowlers, you don't see a subcontinental name there. And if you look at the bowlers all time, which include the English bowlers, no surprises. You've got Anderson right on top. He's got 110 wickets at Lords in 25 games. You've got Broad second, Ian Botham third, Freddie Truman fourth, and Bob Willis fifth. So you could see the dominance of the English bowlers. But obviously, they play a lot more there. Let's go to VVS Laxman. Batted at Lords. The challenge when it comes to facing, let's say, James Anderson away from Lords to at Lords, and perhaps how does it, change things?
I think firstly, it was a brilliant analysis from Steve. That was fantastic. And I think a lot of youngsters who are playing for the first time in Lords should actually hear what Steve just mentioned. It was fantastic analysis. And the same for the batsmen. We keep the same thing what Steve just elaborately told in our mind. I think from if a bowler is bowling from the pavilion end, the ball is going to come back in, just like the way Rohit Sharma got bowled in the first innings. Even though the bowler is trying to bowl an outswinger, even though the wrist position or the seam position and the shine is for the outswinger, if the ball hits the seam on and off, just outside the off stump, the ball can still come back into the right-hander. And that's something which we keep in mind. The other thing is the pace of the bowler, or the pace at which the ball comes to the bat also is much quicker than when the bowler is bowling from the nursery end. Because the slope off the wicket compared to probably when any other bowler is bowling, the same bowler is bowling from the nursery end. Now, from the nursery end, I think it's very clear that the ball is going to go away, and majority of the bowlers will use that slope and take the ball away from the right-hander. But you have to keep in mind that because if a bowler has got a good wrist position, you can't premeditately look to leave the ball. I still remember in 2014, it was Plunkett who got Virat Kohli bowled. I still remember the ball was outside the off stump, and Virat Kohli thought that because of the slope, the ball was going to go away from him. And from that same line, same length, the ball darted back in, and Virat Kohli was out. And since then, Virat Kohli started to play every ball which is pitched on the off stump, outside the off stump. So I just feel that against any bowler, you can't predetermine whether the ball is going to come back in or out. You have to always know where your off stump is and watch the ball closely. But I think there's a stark contrast as far as the pace of the bowler off the wicket when you're bowling from the pavilion end and when you're bowling from the nursery end, and also the value for your shots. As a batsman, when you're running between wickets, you know that whenever you're batting from the nursery end and anything is going on the onside, you get value for your shots. In fact, it is next to impossible for the fielder to chase the ball and stop the ball. Because of the slope. The ball just runs down to the boundary very easily. Whereas it's the other way around when it's going on the offside if you're batting from the nursery end because of the uphill slope there. I think it's very difficult for the batsman to get that boundary until unless he's beautifully timed that shot. And that's why you have to run hard in between the wickets, because the ball can actually go and stop, and you probably can take 2, maybe 3 runs sometimes. So I just feel that the slope will help the bowlers, and especially the bowlers who hit the length and hit the deck more than the swing bowlers. Having said that, I just believe that one of the best spells of fast bowling at Lords I've seen from R.P. Singh. I think it was his debut test match in 2007, and majority of his bowling he did from the pavilion end, and because he's got the ability to swing the ball back into the right-hander, he troubled the English batsman and got 5 on his debut.
All right, brilliant. So I'm just going to come back to Steve. Before that, like I did with the bowlers, I'll just run through the batters that were successful at Lords. You look at the English ones, the ones that piled runs there, Graham Gooch, but of course, over 2,000 runs in 21 matches there. Alistair Cook, Andrew Strauss, Alex Stewart, now Joe Root, Ian Bell there as well. So you can see that, of course, dominated by the English batters. The 5 best overseas batters at Lords, well, it's a pretty decent list. Gary Sobers, Don Bradman, Shivnarayan Chandrapal, Dilip Vengsarkar, 300s, of course, at Lords, the only overseas batter to do so, and Alan Border as your top 5. So that's a pretty impressive overseas list as well. Now, to come to what we were discussing a little while earlier, Steve, on why it could be a challenge perhaps for a bowler who's playing at Lords for the first time, like Siraj or Bumrah, or even someone like Ishant and Shami playing after break. What's the thing that somewhere becomes either a nuisance or an inconvenience, something that takes time getting used to running up the slope?
Well, the first thing that you have to get used to is if your captain asks you to bowl from both ends. Because if you haven't played there before and you haven't bowled from both ends, it is very, very difficult, because the lines and the lengths you bowl from one end is completely different to the lines and lengths you bowl at the other end. Because if you bowl, just for instance, you bowl your first spell from the nursery, from the pavilion end, you have to bowl, especially someone like Mohammad Siraj, who's got a bowl a little bit fuller, trying to swing it away. He's got a bowl, I don't know, that far outside off stump to get it onto off stump if Virat Kohli's asking him to bowl straighter. Now, if he goes down to the nursery end and he bowls that far outside off stump, England just leave him. First of all, they leave him all day, or they just pick and choose which ball they can hit for 4, because that ball outside off stump there, by the time it gets to the batsman, is that far outside off stump. So from that point of view, that is the challenge for somebody that's new to come and do that. So for me, a captain has to in theory, should be saying, look, and in an ideal world, you bowl from that end and you stick to that end and stick to your plan and get a groove, try and create some pressure, and go from the other end, another bowler from the other end. So I think that is the challenge for a new bowler at Lords. And it just seems at this moment in time that because they're chopping and changing and Virat doesn't want to bowl them in longer spells, the ability to build pressure is very, very difficult at Lords, especially against somebody like Joe Root, who scores well down at third man, who uses a slope, lets the ball he's bat and goes down. So then you've got a rotation of strike, then you've got a less build up of pressure, and then all of a sudden the fielders, the demeanour goes down, and then the home crowd gets on top, and you feel as though this is going to be tough, this is hard. But actually, you probably need somebody to take the game by the scruff of the neck and say, right, I'm going to bowl this spell. And for me, it would have been first up, Jasprit Bumrah. And I'd be sitting there thinking if I was Virat Kohli going, right, Jasprit Bumrah, I want you to bowl 4 or 5 good heat overs as quick as you can from the pavilion end and basically go at the England batsmen, see if we can get their foot movement going. And maybe we can get them to play a false shot, because at this minute in time, the game's just meandering on. We can't get any control, and these are making us looking a bit foolish at this minute in time.
Yeah, it's
All right.
interesting. Just to add to that, Raunak, that's the
Please,
beauty of
Laxman.
Test match cricket. And as a Test player, whether a batsman or bowler, you have to get used to different conditions, different surfaces. I remember, a lot of discussion used to happen in our meetings when you're playing in places like New Zealand or in England, because there are some bowlers, the strike bowlers have to use the wind, so they have to with the wind, and there's some bowlers who have to sacrifice for the team and bowl against the breeze. So I think it's the same even with bowling at Lords, because your attacking bowler, you want them to bowl from the pavilion end, because they will be more penetrative and more effective. And then you want a couple of bowlers. Now Virat Kohli has got the luxury of 4 fast bowlers, and a couple of bowlers take that for the team, and bowl from the nursery end, and they are doing more the restrictive job. And then you have the strike bowlers bowling to pick up wickets, and that's how you balance out the attack, and that's how you rotate the bowlers, and when you play even in Perth, because of the Fremantle breeze, you again use the bowlers accordingly, who's an outswing bowler, and use them to bowl not from the pavilion end but from the other side. So I think all this makes Test cricket so fascinating, and I think a lot of thinking and a lot of thought has to be given how to use the bowlers and how to bat in different conditions.
Okay, interesting you'll say that, but that having been said, all this having been said, and this is just brilliant to listen to both of you on, was it universal among all the players you played with that the slope was given so much thought into, or were there those that just believed it doesn't make a difference? It's not such a big deal. I think I could be wrong, but I think I heard Sunil Gavaskar say on the studio show here in India that he didn't really think too much about it. I think Sean Pollock echoed similar sort of statements. Were there those, Steve, from those that you played with, who didn't think it was such a big deal?
Yes, Kevin Peterson didn't think it was a huge deal, but he looked as though he was always looking to score, and his mindset was very, very positive. He loves to score, but he looked to score in different ways. I think it wasn't a big deal for Kevin because he wanted to show a bravado that it wasn't a big deal. Someone like Sean Pollock. Sean Pollock was a line bowler that could hit off stump. Yeah, he could. I made this joke many, many times before. Like somebody like Sean Pollock and Glenn McGrath could hit a 5-pence piece from sort of 19 yards away, and I sometimes struggle to hit a beach towel sometimes when I was in full flow. So there are bowlers that you just know that they can just line it up, line and length, and just nip it away from either end and be comfortable. But there were that it did get into them, and the demons get into them, and not just away bowlers. Even in this Test match, Rannoch, on the first morning, Ollie Robinson bowled wide from nursery end. Mark Wood didn't quite hit his straps and was a touch wide, and I think it was just the brilliance of Jimmy Anderson to get England in that position. But there were people who possibly said, right, I wasn't that bothered about it, but there was a lot of people that really couldn't land the thing in an area when the pressure was on, and it's a Test match, like Vivier says. That's the beauty about Test match cricket, playing all around the world. You have to adapt, and the best players will adapt very, very well and very, very easily, and the average players will just get gobbled up and go around the park.
Laxman, same question to you from the team that you played in.
See, none of us as a batting group ever thought about the slope, as a batting group. But I think, when you're playing international cricket as a batsman, you definitely think about the conditions you're going to play, and what kind of challenges they can pose you. And based on that, what are the shots you can play and what shots you can't play or you have to avoid. But as a bowling group, we definitely thought about that. Which end will suit a particular bowler, which style of bowler will be more effective from a particular end. And all that thought process will definitely go, based on the kind of skill set you have at your disposal. For as a batting group, I think while cricket is a team sport, I feel that batting is more individual, and everyone will back their own individual strengths. So we never ever discuss as a batting group about the slope in at Lords. This is the first time that I'm extensively talking about the slope. I've never ever done this in my career, to be very honest.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I'm not sure if it's something that should be discussed in team
No, it's a
huddles or
very
not.
valid point. I think it's a
Yeah.
very valid point. Especially for the bowlers.
Yeah.
And just to back up on what Steve mentioned, the bowlers may be thinking that they're doing nothing wrong, but because of the
Mm,
slope, the ball which they want to hit the top of off stump is actually going and hitting the middle and leg stump, and they may be thinking, is it anything, any mistake with their bowling action, or is the head falling away, or are they falling onto the offside? They may be thinking about other reason, but the
yeah.
reason for the ball drifting away is a slope. That's why I think for the bowlers it's much more important to take that or factor in the slope more than the batsman.
All right, fair point. Let's look ahead to this session. Second new ball will be due in this session too. Would that possibly change things up? Perhaps we haven't even given enough credit to Besto and Root. They've been great. It just looks like it's so easy for them. But Johnny Besto's been under some pressure, Steve. This is only his it's his first Test 50 since 2019, August 2019, exactly 2 years. So it's an innings that will come handy. 21 innings since he's not got a half century.
Yeah, it is. And Johnny's been battling against himself as well as the selectors to try and cement a place into the England side. I think the thing that I wanted him in this side against India was because of the little bit of fear factor that he gives to the bowlers, because he wears that orange shirt in the IPL and he goes out first, and in some of these bowlers he's faced and belted all around the IPL. So I think there was an element of that, and I wanted him in the team for that. And in a Test match, I think Johnny's batted really, really well, and I actually think when the new ball comes, it'll be interesting to see how India go with it, because I think Root will just play his normal way. I think he let the ball come, deflect it in areas. Certain, I expect Johnny to be more positive and more proactive towards a new ball. And I think Johnny might think this is my time to score. I can score off this new ball. I'll counteract what you've got. It's a placid pitch. If you don't get in a good area, I think I can get boundaries off that because fielders will be in catching position. So I think this is a good test for Johnny to get over the next 5-10 minutes of getting back in at Lords and getting a foot movement going. And then when the new ball comes, I think Johnny might look to cash in.
At the same time, we said at the start of this series, Ian Bell was saying one criticism of Joe Root is he finds a way to just get out when he's looking like he wouldn't. But it looks like in this series, Lakshman, he's in a different level. So when he's batting and he's set like he is right now and is eyeing another Test 100, how do you get a set Joe Root out?
I think again, I will still target the off stump line, because I just feel that bowling onto his pads is detrimental. I feel it becomes easy pickings for Joe Root. I would look to bowl that length. I wouldn't really bowl the ball or pitch the ball really full over pitch, because he's a batsman who is on autopilot mode. He's in a zone, which is the best mindset for any batsman to have. We saw that in Nottingham. We saw in this inning so far. So I think there are two areas where you can still trouble Joe Root, and that is the off and outside the off stump line, and the length has to be little fuller than the good length, and try to not give him easy single. I understand that he loves to work the ball towards the squarish point region. Probably having a fielder there is good, but you don't want him to easily rotate the strike. So I still feel the fielders on the ring, square of the wicket, should be for single saving, and also try bouncers. Because however good a batsman is batting, or whatever rhythm he's in, no batsman will be comfortable if a bowler bowls a very, very good effective bouncer. And when it's talk about effective bouncer, it should be coming and hitting the pads on the helmet. And I think that is where you still create some kind of doubts in his mind, and look to take his wicket and not give easy singles and just make him little restless. And I think that's the best way to get rid of him. But what a beautiful innings he has played so far. Again, one more masterclass from him. And adding to what Steve mentioned about Johnny Bairstow, the way Johnny Bairstow is batting, it will actually make Joe Root a much more relaxed man compared to what he was in Nottingham, because now he knows that there is some kind of contribution from the other end as well. So he will go about his business, not thinking too much about the team. He wants to continue the way he's batting and not give away his wicket like the way he has done in the past.
Yep, absolutely. You'd go with that, Steve, that what Lakshman just said before that maybe a little more of the short stuff, perhaps plan B hasn't been employed or activated enough?
Yeah, I would be sitting in the dressing room thinking, well, how do we get Joe Root out? How has Joe Root dismissals in the past? And you look, he's very, very vulnerable in and around off stump, ball going back onto off stump. He gets bowled quite a bit, the ball hitting the sort of outer part of off stump, or he nicks off. And right, you work back, and how am I going to get him to? Well, you get him in that position, back very, very well with the ball pitched up. He's dropped his hands. He's playing with soft hands, running the ball down to sort of back point, third man, right. How do I now get him into that pushing for the ball going forward? Well, for me, you get him on a back foot. And like Vivier said, 2 or 3 bouncers and over, go really, really hard at him. That's what I'd be asking Jasper Bumrah to do. Maybe he's have a short leg, have a man back, go hard at him and try and get him pushed, his weight pushed back. Because the problem that Joe has is the weight, when the weight's going back, the weight transfer going forward is where he really has his vulnerability. So I think that's what India have to do, is sometimes have to do something the opposite to get a batsman in a position of vulnerability to then really go for the kill. And I think that's where I'd be saying to my bowlers, right, let's go hard at him, push him back, make sure he can't just come down and drop his hands and smother the bounce, and then see if we can get him sort of just off balance, pushing at the ball and see if we can get him to nick it. Because at the minute time, bowling in and around off stump, Joe's luck, so he's as comfortable as anything.
All right. Well, we've got a fascinating session ahead of us. Thank you very much, gentlemen. BVS Laxman, Steve Harmison. We had a thrilling discussion on the slope at Lords, among other things as well. Someone for we can put into the archives as well and listen to again and again. I must ask Steve, though, before we wind up, why can't they just flatten the whole thing? It'll just save all of us a lot of time.
As VVS says, that's the beauty of Test match cricket. I've had a couple of conversations during this Test match with Mark Wood, and every time I finish the conversation, I keep saying to him, "That's Test match cricket." He did say last night, he says, "If I see my bowling boots again, oh, I'm going to be in a world of pain after bowling as many overs." And I did say to him, I said, "Mark, every time my body started feeling half human again, my boots are telling me I've got to put them back on. I'm going out to bowl again." So that's what Test match cricket is, and that's why we love it.
All I can say, Ronald, change is the only constant. So can't rule that out.
Don't rule it out. Don't rule it out. Tomorrow they'll announce. We're going to flatten the whole thing, right? Save us a lot of time.
And they may auction that. They may auction that also.
And save the bowlers some grief. Anyway, thank you very much, Steve, VVS. Always fun talking cricket. We'll pick up this chat at tea time on day 3 on ESPN Cricket for Match Day. Big session coming up. 148, the deficit for England. Joe Root eyeing 100 and the second new ball due. So should make for a great tea time chat. Join us then.